I'm sweating bullets when I'm finished. And I kind of figured that if you don't sweat, there's not enough soul on it then.
Hey, Paul, how's it going?
Hey, Brandon, how are you? Can you see me? Or can I see you?
It's up to you if you want to be on video. This is just for audio, so it's entirely up to you if you want to be on camera or not. Doesn't matter to me.
Okay, well, yeah, I'm fine.
Okay, sounds good. Nice studio behind you.
Oh, thanks.
What are you running? What is that? Bit of a gear nut myself, so I'm kind of curious what you got sitting behind you.
It's Digital Performer. I mean, as far as the DAW, you mean Digital Performer and a bunch of rack gear, great amps and stuff like that. And I only kept on Digital Performer because, I learned it and I didn't want to learn another program.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I hear you. You know what? You'd go with what you know.
Yeah, well, actually, Digital Performer, believe it or not, was the flagship for Pro Tools. I mean, a while back, because they were actually the original, Motu was the original company and Digital Performer was their, main product. Pro Tools was a side product. And then it completely reversed. And I can't say that I like it more than I used to. I don't. But I just didn't want to learn it. I mean, I learned so many programs and I just got finished learning all the analog stuff and then I had to quit.
Oh, that's funny. When I do these, I like to start at the beginning of you as a musician and then work our way up to the new record.
Okay.
So starting from the beginning, where did you grow up and how did you get started in music?
I grew up out in the San Fernando Valley. I think I was maybe 13 when my mom thought I was going crazy because we were in an apartment. And so she got me a guitar and I didn't know what to do with it. Made a bunch of noise on it. Neighbors started banging on the doors, that kind of stuff. And she got me a few lessons and I started liking it a little bit more, as I went on. From there, I learned how to play, but I was really terrible at it in the first couple of years. You're not real great.
Yeah.
And I kind of sucked for a while. And then all of a sudden I started liking it and I got a little better at it. Met some people and I, started sweeping out studios and I basically saw people making records. And it totally freaked me out because I was, 16 or so at the time and just would do anything to watch them, how, they put records together. So that's what I did for, a while. And then maybe a year later, I started actually getting pretty good on it, but still wasn't great. But I mean, it's like I was one of those guys who just kind of picked it up. So I started playing clubs when I was like 18 at night. And going to school in the day, and I had no idea I was going to be a musician. Actually, I just liked it. I was kind of a nerdy guy growing up, as far as being a diode head. I skipped a couple of years of college, when I took a placement test, and ended up. I thought I was going to go into medicine or something. I didn't know, but I was on a science major originally, and then I got a scholarship and all this other stuff that I never used. But anyway, on the last year of this one thing when I was in college, I started taking music classes, and I ended up taking like 7 music classes, and I flunked them all because I didn't know anything, what I was doing at all. But I kept all the books so I could read it later, and figure it out. And so, it was shortly after that I quit school after I got signed when I was like 19. So
tell me about that, because that was actually going to be my next question. So because in 1979 or so you did 2 solo albums and they both sound a bit different from each other. So tell me about getting signed and doing those 2 records.
Well, when you first get something, you first start working on it. I was when I was doing the club stuff. I mean, the club stuff we were pretty good at because we did exactly like the records and stuff. So we were a good club band. However, this isn't what I wanted to do. I was, after sweeping out as many studios as I did, I couldn't really wanted to, make a record or do a record or something like that. So that's kind of how it happened. A guy came into the club that happened to own a record label, and he came up to me afterwards and asked me, he says, you ever had a record deal? I said, no, I'll sign one.
Yeah.
So, I already had the pen, ready to go. And he did dance music, basically. So I did a crash course in it with all the people that he was kind of surrounded with, kind of emulated everything pretty quick and just started writing in that vein and coming up with that kind of stuff because that's what he did. I'd have done polka music if that's what he'd done.
Yeah, that's what the job says, right?
So I was going, hey, I got a record deal. It doesn't matter what I do. I was like, I got signed. So I learned. Yeah, I learned a lot because I ran into a lot of really great people that he had repped and was working with. That happened to be right at the end of the disco era, I guess. And a couple of songs that I had on the record, that first record were, because I was kind of a rock guy basically always. So it was kind of influential as far as, like I had more rockier stuff on the dance stuff than normal.
Yeah.
And so they started using it as a transition at the clubs between the dance stuff and the rock stuff. So it got a tremendous amount of play, kind of a big segue into the other piece. So that became pretty popular, but when the guy that I had originally signed with, he changed his company over to MCA, and they were not a dance company. It was like as far as, what they did. And it was just a way that I could start doing rock stuff. That's why they don't sound alike, because none of the people involved were the same except for the owner, and he didn't care what kind of music it was as long as it paid a lot.
Yeah, as long as it sells, right?
Yeah, and that's kind of the thing that was with him. And so like early on, from my 20s on, I was doing pretty much rock stuff, and I met this guy named Norman Whitfield on the way, who's an amazing guy. He's he passed away, but he's written like every hit you ever heard, from, War, Was It Good For, that kind of thing.
Oh, really?
Yeah. He was just, to Heard It Through the Grapevine, to all those kind of songs that, like you've heard all your life, but you just didn't know who wrote them. Well, Norman did. So he let me, and he was, this black guy that let me be in one of his bands, like that he was working with Warner Brothers. So at that time was when I, played quite a bit, and I was like the token white guy in all these bands he had. So, one of the bands did pretty well, and we actually were on tour with the Isley Brothers.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah, and he was on tour with us because he watched over his bands pretty well. Anyway, so Norman and I got to be kind of as close to as friends as we could be without being weird. It's like because black guys, and white guys weren't intermingling back then in bands. At least I don't think so. Maybe there were. I just never ran into it. But I was like his guy that he liked, and so everybody else liked me because he liked me. But we would sit back behind the stage, where the Isleys were playing, and I'm going, man, this is what I got to do. Listen to that guy play. Oh, it's just, it was, you talk about heavy. It was just beyond heavy. And, it just left an impression on me like, wow, this is what I got to do. So that's kind of how, I got going from like a really cheapo guitar to getting better ones.
Yeah, it's funny. A lot of people that I've interviewed sort of have that same thing where you kind of get taken under the wing. You sort of get lucky, and there's someone who really knows the business sort of takes you under and really jumps you up a step.
Yeah, well, he jumped me up a full couple stories. Really, he just, I can't tell you the impression this guy had, but he was so musical that it was just amazing the stuff he would come up with and the lines that he would come up, like Papa was a Rolling Stone, when he'd come up with these lines that you just go, man, where's he get this shit? But then he'd work on it, and you just see him like, sway back and forth, like, while he's working on this stuff. Not like in the dance mode or anything like that, but just like if he swayed, you knew it was right.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And he'd let me come in and watch him work at night, when he was mixing and stuff. And I learned so much from that guy, and I don't even know what I learned. It was just like kind of oozed in me. It was like osmosis or something, diffusion or whatever you want to call it. It was just happened that this is the thing that I really decided I loved or I wanted to do, and I did. And after, I did it for a while, I just kept doing it.
Yeah. So now, is it through him? Because it was a couple years later you did the Kidd Glove record. Now, from what I understand, is that where you started to produce your own music? Was the Kidd Glove album?
Well, Kidd Glove was an audition, and it was done at Motown, believe it or not. And I'd see Norman all the time, actually, down there, because that was the Motown studios. But the Kidd Glove was at a time period when Motown could not be Motown, and they had to hire a bunch of different guys to run Motown because otherwise the guy who originally run Motown would be in jail.
Oh, geez.
It was a very complicated story. So in other words, they got a bunch of pop guys in, and they started a new label off the Motown thing called Morocco, and that's where Kidd Glove came in. And I actually just auditioned for that gig with 1,000 other people and got the gig to do that. But that had actually, and we did it at the Motown studios, like people would look at it like, what is that doing in here?
Yeah.
I wonder what that is. And it's like, I actually see people looking at the Marshall and going, so it was just kind of one of those times when I actually didn't, produce the album myself, but Tony Peluso and Steve Berry did, but I was just the guy, basically just the singer, guitar guy, for the band that they had chosen. But what that album did was I was so frustrated with that album at the time that we were doing it, I started writing all the Heartbreak stuff.
That's my next question. So tell me about now this record.
Yeah.
How did, that record come together, the band, the production, everything?
The Heartbreak record?
Yeah.
The Heartbreak record started basically because the Kidd Glove album was a very corporate album. I can't say anything more than just that. It was super corporate. It was like an 8 to 10 to 5 job, and at 5 o'clock everybody knock off, and then everybody came back at 10. You had an hour off to lunch. To me, records aren't made like that, but they made that record that way. So I was kind of like, about it. So that's when I started doing the Heartbreak stuff and writing it. And I never sounded on record exactly how I wanted to sound. So I figured I could probably do this, and sound just as shitty as they made me sound. So that was like the first, album that I did when I actually engineered, I did everything on it. But it meant a lot to me because I did the songs, I wrote, rock songs that I loved that I wanted to do, but they wouldn't be on the Kidd Glove album because it wasn't right for the Kidd Glove thing. And so that was kind of like the first, 85 when that came out was like the first rock album to me. I did.
Yeah, as far as your discography, I think that's where you really found your sound.
Yeah, it was like and if anybody liked it, it was because of me, and anybody that didn't like it, it was because of me. You know what I mean? So
yeah,
it was no doubt that it was just one of those things where I was, had say so in it because I wanted to make it sound like I wanted to make it sound rather than how everybody else is trying to make it sound all the time.
Yeah.
I just kind of did it from there. Let me just turn here.
So on that record, you also had Angeline, and I didn't realize that was a fairly big single from it. I want to say Signal, which is the name of my show, but that was a fairly big single from that. Tell me about that song. How did it do, that kind of thing?
Well, it wasn't, ever since I started writing, I never had I didn't have to have an experience for it or anything like that. I would just, I'd think about things and this would be cool. And it was not I didn't have to have a girlfriend named Angeline, or I didn't have to have, anything like that. I would just pick things out of the air. Basically, when I'd start playing a riff and I found a riff that I liked, I would start singing to it. And whatever I sang, I kind of morphed into like a name or something like that. And that's kind of how it worked. Nothing was ever preconceived for me, as far as like, oh, I got to write a song about this girl. You know what I mean? Like that, it was nothing like that. So that, Angeline was just one of the songs that I'd written, during that Kidd Glove time and I put together, and I wasn't much more to that as far as thinking about it. Just I really liked the song, so I, put it on the album.
So I got a little story for you. So I've been a big fan of the Only Child record for a long time. I'm driving around with a friend of mine, had that record on in the car, and number 9 comes on, and he goes, "Why do I know this song?" He goes, "Wait, this is Wasp." So tell me about doing Scream Until You Like It. I had no idea that was in Ghoulies too, that Wasp had covered it until he mentioned something.
Yeah, well, Ghoulies loved the song. You know what I mean? I had a friend who pitched the song for a closing tune, right? they all loved the song. I mean, it wasn't like, like we don't like it or anything, like I don't know, or anything like that. So it wasn't that. They loved the song. Problem is like Only Child was just coming out. We, nobody knew of us. You know what I mean? It's like we hadn't even come out yet.
Sure.
They wanted somebody famous to do it. So they ended up getting, I don't actually know who they talked to, but they got Wasp to do it because at the time he was a happening thing. And that's how that song got in Ghoulies. I mean, as far as like how Wasp did it because they were famous and we weren't. And they wanted a famous band to do the song.
Yeah. Oh, that's funny. Has that happened to you a fair amount? Because like all the movies and everything else you've done, is that a fairly common occurrence, or does it mostly come out as Paul Sabu stuff, getting into movies and TV and all that kind of thing?
Usually they don't care. I mean, normally in normal circumstances they don't care. They just know if they like something. If the director likes it, he could care less if Mickey Mouse wrote it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? He just doesn't care. He only knows if it works for the scene or if it helps the piece of, whatever he's doing, the creativity thing. So actually that has never happened before because after that, I got relatively not famous, but I mean, people liked me, at this stuff. So I never had to, have another band cover to get into anything. They just liked, the way it was. But I don't mind, a couple of funny things on the Ghoulies thing was like sometimes I'd play the song, and we play live, and they always ask me, why don't you play a Wasp tune? And I go, wait, no. That nobody knew I had written it, So that was the only thing about that ever happened. But luckily, I didn't have to do that again. So no, it was pretty much the discretion of the directors at the time or the music supervisors, or, something like that. Music supervisors and directors are who you have to please.
Yeah, fair enough. So I actually just interviewed a couple weeks ago Jimi Bell.
Oh, right.
And so we talked about his band Joined Forces. Tell me how you got involved producing their second record.
Well, first off, you got to know Jimmy and I are like brothers. So we're it might be a little bit one-sided, but the thing of it is everybody seemed to be from Connecticut.
It's so funny. Like I just interviewed both Jimmy and James Christian.
Right. Okay.
And we spent half the time just talking about the Connecticut scene.
The reason why is because that band plus every other band in Connecticut seemed to be managed by this lady, right? And she, I think Holly Thrasher, I believe. And yeah, and everybody was managed by the same person. And so Holly asked me to come take a listen to this band. So I did, and I go, yeah, they're great. I loved them. And in fact, we did a lot of stuff. I mean, Livio came over to the house to sing his tracks on this other thing we did, but actually didn't come out. But I mean, it's like, we got to know everybody really well. Jimmy and I hit it off really good from the beginning. And we had a lot of fun making the record at night, these really cheap studios and it made it sound great. Yeah,
it's a fantastic record, and it's too bad it didn't come out, or it did, but 20 years after the fact.
Yeah, it was sick actually.
It's heartbreaking and it's funny to think now how many records I own like that were either demos or were properly produced and just sat in a shelf for 20 years until someone rediscovered it and went, why hasn't the world heard this?
Yeah. I mean, it's crazy the stuff that I mean, and people go, "Did you do that?" And I said, "Yeah." I mean, why? Like if you're not, if you liked it, yes. If you didn't, no. Then Bob did it. But it was it like to me it was one of their better recordings actually. As far as songs go and things like that. But there was a giant Connecticut guitar playing goofballs and everybody was with everybody that knew, from Christian Pelletieri to, just everybody was there.
Yeah.
And everybody was out trying to outdo each other and at the same time make the same kind of records to see who liked it better, in a healthy kind of, achievement, not a disproving kind of, way. Just like, they wanted to be good. They wanted recognition from each other. They wanted, it's like it's healthy. You know what I mean? To have peers.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I look at where I'm from, which is Windsor, Ontario, right across from Detroit. As I was coming up, there's an amazing music scene here where it's like a friendly competition in a way. It's like everybody makes each other better and everybody wants to work each other and help each other out and bring everybody up.
Yeah, I actually found that more so in Canada than I did here. Because in Canada, I mean, I couldn't believe, in the first place, you go up to Canada, and I also found that, like, when you go to a rehearsal place, there's like 10 places, and it is one place. And each band sounds like better than the other. You know what I mean? They're just great bands. And I'm going, where have all these bands come from? You know what I mean? And it's kind of like going, shit, they all sound like Zeppelin, or they all sound like this, or they all, they're all just killer bands. But I also found that, like, they would stop and they would get together at their little meeting place, where the desk was, and be smoking away or whatever they're doing, and just hanging out and always pepping each other up. They're always, oh, hey, man, you in that band? Oh, that's cool. I mean, it was like a totally different than the Hollywood scene, which was like, if you weren't this, you were, they'd stick your nose up, or this, or that kind of thing. It wasn't competitive like that, but yet it was still, they still want to be loved by the fellow people, but they weren't competing with them somehow. I don't know how to even say it, what the right word is, but it was really cool.
Yeah. Now, tell me, you worked with, I mean, I think there's quite a few other Canadian artists, but the two big ones that I'm aware of are Glass Tiger and Lee Aaron.
Yeah. Well, Glass Tiger was mixing Glass Tiger, and I actually took the job because Bryan Adams was singing in the background. Lee Aaron, I was writing her the other night, and something happened to the internet, and it went down, and I never actually sent her the email. But I found the other day, we would get together, like on these sessions to write for her album. I think it was the hands-on session, or is it Body Rock? I'm not.
Body Rock is what I'm aware of. I need to dig out the CD and actually make sure your name's on there. But what I've read is you were on that record.
Yeah, I was. I think I'm on all of them. But if Hands On was on that record, or was that on her other? I don't remember what record it was. But anyway, we were writing. I'll be the guitar player and Aaron and myself. We were, in a room writing. And we were written for about 5 days, and we were just out of our minds, right? Writing, and we really came up with some cool stuff. In fact, some of the stuff never even got out. I might even do one on the next album, the Frontiers thing, because it was just great stuff. But the funny part is, the last song we wrote was called PMS, and I found it the other day, and it was just the funniest song you've ever heard, but a great song. Once a month I feel real shitty, make Linda Blair and The Exorcist look pretty. It's just line after line of this kind of stuff. And we were just nuts over this song because we were so tired, and we wrote such a cool tune. But anyway, that was working with her.
So that never made the record, eh?
No, that did. Actually, I got to send that to her because I don't think I don't even know if she remembers it. I mean, we were so tired. But I have a copy. It's hilarious. But working with her was great because she just had this voice that was just really cool. And it was really silky smooth and raspy too. And it was, whatever it was really something you liked.
Yeah, it was, I mean, like in Canada, like Metal Queen and especially What You Do to My Body, I mean, is still massive, massive hits. And Hands On, I totally forgot which record it was. It is Body Rock. I'm just looking at it here.
Yeah. Actually, that was Hands On was their biggest single, I think. It was a great. When we wrote together, it was a good writing team.
Yeah, well, it's funny. Like even looking through the team that was involved with this record. I mean, I don't know how far into this you are. I mean, I'm looking like Scott Humphrey on drums, who's done a million things. Matthew Gerard, John Albani on guitar, who I know wrote a lot of the stuff with her.
John's like the writer that we always work with. The three of us always, like. Me and Lee and John were the three writers that always got together to write.
Oh, I see. Okay. Yeah, I'm seeing like Stan Meisner wrote for part of this. And
yeah, no, I mean, like she had amazing budgets from the label, to fly people in to write with. It was kind of fun to do because, there was always these bunch of great people around that she had writing with them. It was a good time when writing a great song really mattered.
Yeah. So tell me this. So I see that you were involved with Alice Cooper's Hey Stoopid.
Yeah.
Now, was that mixing? Was that more involved with the writing?
A little bit of both. And the guy that's on the actual Hey Stupid album at the end where it's screaming, that's me.
Oh, really?
That's yeah. So that was kind of all three because I was working on another Paul, can't think of his last name, engineer. I was working on another album with him, and I came over there, worked on with the other producer, Paul. It was like one of those things where like everybody was. It was kind of like the Connecticut connection, except it was it was in the LA connection.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah, I know. I interviewed Paul Northfield.
Yeah, Northfield.
Yeah, that's it.
And it was funny because, like, too, on the backgrounds, on a lot of that stuff, there was a bunch of people who, it was like the East Coast backgrounds and the West Coast backgrounds. And I was involved in the West Coast backgrounds. And, I had a whole other stack of people doing the East Coast background. Sounded completely different, but put them together, they sound pretty cool.
Oh, I bet. Oh, well, you start putting all those voices together, I'm sure it sounded massive as well.
Yeah, it was pretty, it just a cool idea of the East Coast, West Coast shit.
Now, tell me this. It's funny, the first thing that I became aware of you was randomly finding a song on Napster years ago, and it was from the 1996 Paul Sabu record. Tell me about that record. That, out of everything you've done, is probably what I've listened to the most just because of when I discovered it,
Well, oddly enough, the East Coast, West Coast thing, this guy Lance Bulin, who was in Baton Rouge.
Oh, yep.
Okay, so Lance and I got to be kind of like writing partners for a while. And then we put this band together with, Dave Spitz and Jerry. I'm trying to think of the last name. I'm terrible with names. But anyway, it's like Jerry, and who was like just a guy that was just amazing that we found in a rehearsal room kind of thing. So we got killer band together. And we had written, a lot of songs. Lance and I had written a lot of songs, and we were putting in, in this band thing. But we ended up later just writing, the song, and then I redid them, for the album because they actually, the band we put together, nobody really liked, except for musicians.
Racer X, we call that.
Yeah, I mean, it's like musicians from all over would come and see us, but the record labels go, well, that's when the grunge was too much, and we're not grungy enough, and then we started getting grungier, and then the grunge started going out. It's like, so it was like he never can keep up with trends. And, so you never bother. But, so it was one of those bands that everybody loved, but it wasn't one of those bands that record companies loved. But we wrote a lot of great songs together. So that was mostly, on the Paul Sabu, the Superman album.
Oh, that's great. So in the last decade or so, you've co-written several songs with a good friend of mine, Tony Mills.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Did Tony contact you to write songs with? Have you known him for a while? I know in the late 80s, he was around the LA scene a lot. Tell me about kind of working with him, writing on those records, that kind of thing.
Well, I mean, Tony, unfortunately, I didn't get to, hang with him that long. But it actually came through a friend of mine who had done an album with him, Lincoln Anderson, who had done, I think it was the Mills Anderson album. Was called,
yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah.
And anyway, so I had played with Lincoln in a couple of things. And Tony said, asked me, he says, oh, man, I'd really like to write with that guy. He's up for it. I always liked his stuff. So Lincoln actually put us together. And Tony was, just a gentleman of a guy, just a wonderful guy. And, we kind of wrote some songs right off and had no problems. And then the main thing with Tony is, he got married and his wife managed him, which is kind of I don't know if I like that kind of stuff. But anyway, it's a little bit Spinal Tap for me. But it was the same kind of thing with Frankie Benelli and his wife, that it just kind of throws problems in.
Yeah, I mean, and you see that all over the place. I mean, Yngwie, Jeff Tate. I mean, there's many people that do that to varying effect.
Yeah, it's just weird. It kind of, I don't know what it is, but it shouldn't be. but we managed to write some cool songs together and then he passed away.
Yeah. Well, it's funny, like listening to his last couple solo albums. I mean, my favorite songs from that are ones that you were involved with and wrote. Battleground and a couple others.
Yeah.
On there. So you never got to meet him back in the day, eh? Back like in the LA scene, that kind of thing?
No. He came and saw me once, he said, and his wife liked me. And I go, I thought that was kind of weird, from saying, but then I find out later that he had like 5 wives. So I guess, I don't know which, it may not have been his wife at the time. It could have been a different wife. But
for sure.
I was going, oh, well, isn't that nice?
That's funny. All right, so you've got a fantastic new record out called Banshee with Barry Sparks of Dokken and Ted Nugent, all the stuff he's done. Tell me about this record, because it's just the two of you involved with this. So, who played what? Tell me about the writing, all of that kind of thing.
Yeah, well, first off, it was a hard record to make with the record label we have, Frontiers. I mean, they're very, very picky about everything. And in a good way, not bad. I mean, they're very, they really take their artists under their wings, and they actually, everybody knows about everything they're doing. They're very focused on what they want to do. But Barry and I have been friends for years. I mean, we grew up together, and we've been in, a ton of bands. I don't know, just, done projects all over the place.
Yeah.
And we had been working on one, and we were just starting this other one together, because we do that often. And in the parts, it's just a matter of like, you start writing something and you lay it down, and then he comes in, says, hey, let's try some of these drums parts here or something. And, I said, okay, let's do that. Hey, I got a great idea. Just go with me on this. And, it's like we just start swapping ideas back and forth, that kind of thing. That's kind of how we form this stuff. Now, he's, beyond that, like I can make a record here by myself, but that doesn't mean I should make a record here by myself. You know what I mean? It's like,
yeah,
it's always good to have another set of ears on it. It's always good to have a guy who's really talented, and that's, what he is.
Yeah.
And he's great at stuff. I mean, he's a great bass player. He's a great guitar player. He's great at all this stuff. He plays, and it's weird because his style is so different that you get ideas from the different things that he does. So even though it may not be the same thing he did, it kind of like spawned from that.
Yeah, the energy of just playing with them or whatever, it totally brings you to a new place.
Yeah, and I mean, and it's just kind of, like it's centrifugal bumblefuck into this, thing. And I think that could be a word, I guess. But, it's kind of how we did the album. And it wasn't, for sure I sang the stuff, and I know he played bass on it, and I did the solos, and he did some of the drums, I did some of the drums. We, it's like, I got a great key part, here's a key part, it's like, it's like we all did stuff, things that we heard that would make the songs better. And it was, relatively easy that way to put it together. We've done many albums that way anyway, and all the new albums that come out are done that way. So it's not like, it's foreign.
No, exactly. Well, sharing ideas over the internet, I mean, that's albums for the last 20 years, pretty much.
Kind of, a lot of times, one of the things that I do get to see the bands is because I'm good at doing vocals with the guys, because, I kind of know when, I guess because I can sing or something, I kind of, know when they're good and when they're not, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's easier for me to, figure out something, because, a lot of times, a vocalist will, get this one line and everything's great except this one line, and he'll want to do the line over here that's great instead of the line that's bad. It's like I can pick that stuff out really easy for me, at least. And so I do vocals with a lot of people too, where you have to be together. You can't just pretend, okay, I'll send you a track and you tell me if you like, It's like you kind of have to do it, because if the melody line isn't right and they keep doing the thing wrong, the same, in the same place, you have to change something. It's like you change the line somehow or something like that. But it doesn't dawn on people when they're alone, because they don't realize that it's not right, or, it's going against the rhythms of the whatever's happening, or, something. So that's one of the things about, vocal wise, where you get to see the other person sometimes. And, Barry off and on has lived really, he used to live out where I live now. So, we've been able to see each other a lot, but now he's back in Florida and, I'm out here. So, it's like, now we're not even seeing each other. And it's just, it's a drag, because all the bands you've been in and all the friends you've had and stuff like that, you don't even get to see each other. send each other things and you talk to each other, but it's not like playing in a band together.
No, no. There's just something there's a certain vibe of being in a room that is impossible to recreate. You can get damn close with the internet or whatever, but it
can't be, because
being able to look at each other and feed off the same energy in that moment creates something.
One of the things is what bands do that you don't do on the records these days are the mistakes. There's mistakes that happens in bands that were like, some guy hit the wrong thing or something like that. That'll just be cool as shit. And you go, that's great. You know what I mean? But technically, if the band wasn't playing all at once and you could hear that, you'd never get to the fact that, it was an accident.
I went to see a talk by Eddie Kramer at NAMM a couple of years ago, and my one takeaway line from his entire incredible lecture that day was, leave the mistakes in.
Yeah. Well,
he talked about a printing mistake on I can't think of the Zeppelin tune, but where it stops. There's just Robert Plant, and there's the backward echo behind him. Woman, that.
Yeah.
I'm blanking on what song it is, but he's like, no, if it had been today, that mistake would have never happened, and it's such a cool effect and thing that happens in the song.
Yeah, and you can't really figure out why it is, because it isn't quite in the right time place. It isn't right. You know what I mean? It's like it's everything is off. And they figured, okay, well maybe the erase head didn't erase. There's two takes, and it didn't erase the one before it or something like that. And then it got flipped around, and then there's all these things. But the point of it is it was cool.
Yeah, yeah.
And today, you got digital, and digital is not forgiving like analog was. In the digital world, if you did something like that, it's not, it'd be really loud, and, brassy or something like that. And you'd go, oh, what is that? You know what I mean? Like, it wouldn't be like that cool, subtle thing. It'd be like this really too loud, weird thing. And that's the, one downside of, the digital stuff today. Because even when you play takes where you think you just nailed the part, you know what I mean? When you think you just, this is great. I nailed this part. You listen back and you go, I think I'm actually rushing it. You know what I mean? It's like there's something about digital. It does that, and I know technically what it is. I just don't know how to combat it when you're doing it.
Yeah.
It's like digital it doesn't distort in the same harmonic that tubes do. You know what I mean? Or analog does, and so your ears don't like it as much, and so it's kind of like very sharp and hits you that way. And so you don't, the coolness of it just kind of going, even people, punch in lines and stuff like that, and it's not quite right, but it just sounds great.
Yeah. You
don't have that anymore. You have like perfect.
No, it's the modern conundrum is pretty much how much, quote unquote perfection do you leave in to it. As a metal fan, I can't tell you how many Math albums I've listened to where the person clearly programmed the drums to be exactly on time. And it's like, okay, that's great, but where's the human in this? Where's the feel?
Yeah, I totally agree. And that's why sometimes mine are not like, just spot on, because it felt right to me then. I'm going to wait. You know what I mean? See how it sounds like when everything else gets said. So a lot of times I end up leaving stuff, that I thought sounded, felt really good when I did it. And, it's like, and I also, I'm not into tuning as far as the vocals go. I tune other people. I have nothing against tuning. I think it's a great thing. Except I just got this thing about me. If I can't sing it, I would quit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's just kind of how I've always felt. I said, well, when I can't sing something, I'm gonna just quit making records. And so far, I haven't quit yet. Either that, or I'm gonna start making records that are out of tune. I don't know exactly which ones, but I've always had that kind of like, hair up my butt about no, I can't. I don't mind doing it for anybody, but not me. You know what I mean? I'm not gonna do it, and so I don't. But it still doesn't mean that it wouldn't be just a little better. I don't know. I can always, hear all. I mean, there's a lot of different programs that tune, and I can hear them all. I mean, I can hear I can hear the weirdness of it.
The same.
It's not as fresh or something. I don't know. It's just but I can hear it. So I don't do it. And not only that, but it also psychologically fucks you up because you're thinking, okay, if I don't quite get it, it'll be okay anyway. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You gotta get it. I mean, it's like, but I mean, I kind of am, I embrace the fact of like, putting every ball you've got into stuff. You know what I mean? It's like, I mean, I'm sweating bullets when I'm finished. And I kind of figured that if you don't sweat, there's not enough soul on it then.
Yeah, it ain't rock and roll.
It's just not. So, I mean, you get the sweat meter too. You know what I mean? It's like, and I mean, I know guys, I mean, they'll eat a pizza and come in and sing and, it's okay. There's not much soul to it. You know what I mean? It's like, and with the auto-tune and everything like that, it makes it sound okay. But if you're just going to go for just, balls out, sing your song, and when you get it, it's right. You can't use all that stuff or else you lose the originality of it.
Yeah, it's singing a song versus a performance.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's the thing is people forget a performance can come across through the microphone too.
Yeah, and I'm only good for like 3 takes. The first take is usually the best because I'm not thinking about it at all.
Yeah.
Second take, it starts kind of go from your soul to your heart, I mean, from your soul to your brain. And so, like, I'm about here on my second take. By third take, I'm totally in my brain. So it's technically right, but it's not soulful.
Yeah.
Like it was. So it's not like, but I admire the people who can like sing something 40 times and actually have it sound right 40 times. You know what I mean? It's like, but it doesn't ever get quite better or it gets worse. You know what I mean? Like with me, there's no doubt. Like, I mean, I'm either on or I'm not. It's like, I have my moments where I just suck.
Yeah.
And then I have my moments where I feel it. I'm right. You know what I mean? It's like, so and I think you need those moments.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Well, it's also like the Bruce Dickinson thing of singing Number of the Beast, that opening scream that's iconic and everybody knows. Why? Because he sang it 50 times and he finally got it right.
Yeah.
If he'd taken the first scream, that song wouldn't be that song. That would not be that moment that everybody waits for every concert,
Yeah, yeah. And at that, it's probably pre-recorded. So,
yeah.
I mean, I was working with, like the Faithful Smile guys. I mean, really diligently, a lot of others.
Great band. Yeah, tell me about working with them. Yeah, great band.
Great guys. Way too fucking tall, but great guys. and I mean, they're all like 7 feet. I mean, it's like sweet. Swedish people are just big.
Yeah.
But the guitar player and I got along great. Blade and I got along great. I mean, it wasn't that we didn't get along great. It was the fact that they had great techs with them also. And we were at one show, and the band was actually playing before they got on stage. So I mean, they were like, like there's, you go, okay, well, I don't know what, judging that, you don't know which parts are real, which parts aren't, because they're really good at it, like as far as what they'll add in and what they don't. So it was kind of a thing where, like, in today's tech, it's almost too much tech.
Yeah, yeah. It's all about trying to keep the human in the music nowadays.
Yeah, I mean, nobody's going to just show up there with just a mixer and a couple of speakers,
So you've got Banshee that just came out. What else do you have on the horizon as far as your own material, production, that kind of thing? What do you have coming up in the pipeline?
I'm actually I worked on a couple songs already. I'm doing 3 more albums for Frontiers, so I kind of started working on them already because they're, Frontiers is, and I'm also in that groove of what Frontiers likes. So we're shooting another video, Rock the House, which is pretty cool too. But, I kind of started some songs for the next album. And I have no idea what really is going to happen because I don't know if, like, there's all of a sudden going to be touring dates or if there's actually going to be, another wave of influenza where you have to keep the germs out. And so, I mean, I'm just kind of, like, basically working on the next stuff. And, I've like 3 songs into it already. So, I mean, I'm not going to play it for anybody. And I'm not going to act like I'm, that's what I'm doing. It's just that I know that, it takes a lot to get something, unique, and everybody's all over the place now, as far as where they are. And it's hard to say, like, okay, well, I'm going to write with this guy and do this and think of this guy and do this. It just, you kind of have to be a lone ranger almost, now, because most of your friends are moved away or something, and you kind of left with, just what you are. So I'm just going to put as many cool songs together as I can.
Fantastic. Well, I mean, you figure too, you're a songwriter, what do? You write songs, and whatever happens with it, happens with it.
That's exactly right.
I can't remember who I interviewed recently, but that's exactly what they said. They're like, I just write songs, whether it winds up in this band or that band or this project. I don't know. I just write songs, and we'll figure out where they go.
Yeah, that's kind of the thing. I mean, I don't know if a couple of songs that I just wrote will even, be the right ones for the album, but I got to write. It's not like I'm saving the best ideas for later. Anybody does that can't write a song, or they're worried about the song, or something. They'll never write their best song. But it's definite that to get a bunch of great songs together, you have to have a lot of songs to choose from. You always got to suck one in there somewhere.
Yeah. Well, you know Kim Mitchell, right?
Yeah.
He said a great line. Someone said, like, what do you do when you go to write a hit? And he's like, write a hit? It's a miracle I even have any. He's like, if you'd have told me the songs of mine that got big were going to be big, I would have called you a liar to your face as I was writing them.
Yeah. I mean,
it's one of those things. I mean, you can kind of get a vibe off some things. Okay, this is good. This might do something, but beyond that, this will be a hit. And he's like, I have no idea.
Yeah,
I have no idea.
You can't tell. I mean, it's like I've done radio program things, and everybody has a different single, off of Banshee. I mean, everyone. I mean, it's like before it was usually, like when you had radio stations back when they would kind of gravitate to one song for the next single, and you would pick the next single because the radio was playing it. Now, it's just a free-for-all for everybody because, different people have their favorites, and, they know that they don't have to buy a whole album. They can just buy their favorites, and that's what they do, so they get their favorite ones. So Rock the House, is not necessarily a single, but maybe people will like the video. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's funny, like when you started mentioning that, I started looking through the track list. I'm like, what would my favorite be? I'm like, maybe Candy. That was one that grabbed me on my first listen. Blinded Me is up there, Skin to Skin. I mean, I'm just looking through. I'm like, I don't even know what I would, if I were in your shoes and had to pick a single, I don't know. I honestly don't know. There's a couple I think might fit that mold, but I don't know.
Oh, well, you know how we're doing Rock the House. You know how we picked that? I said, look, I don't know what the next single is, period. Frontiers doesn't know what the next single is. Nobody knows. So, Enzo, the video guy, the produces all their videos. I said, listen to the album. Pick a song you want to do a video on. I don't care. So he goes, man, if we could do Rock the House. I said, great, Rock the House. So, he goes, here's the concept. You're in a bar. I said, perfect. Let's do it.
Yeah, hey, sometimes that's what it takes, right? You got an outside voice to be like, what's your favorite? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it's like one of those things where it's great that people have, all these different favorites, but it also makes it harder to, I hate to pick the wrong one, like this one would have really, helped this, but, Rock the House is just one of those cool songs. It's an up-tempo, rocker that, Candy was like just a kind of a normal hit type-ish song, mid-tempo, and I didn't want to do another mid-tempo one. I wanted to do, a heavier one that was cool. That, you can do faster cuts and everything looks like happening.
Yeah, exactly. It's hard to have an album full of singles in mid-tempo. It's like, change it up a little bit.
It's like, especially with no band, and, it's like, you're doing this thing, especially on the notice that we had, it's like, I think I turned the album in, and 2 weeks later, I was going to LA to shoot the video, it's like,
wow.
They just gave it to me on a piece of paper of what singles were coming out. And I said, okay, all right, great. All right, okay, I'm gone. I'm going. I'll just show up.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. Well, Paul, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to do this.
My pleasure,
really enjoying
man.
the new record. The problem is I don't know any of the song titles. I just have it on a loop in my car, so I know Candy and a few others, but like I'm looking through the track list being like, oh, that's what that one's called. Okay. That kind of thing.
No problem, man. I appreciate it. It's really, I appreciate the a lot.
Thank you so much. So yeah, hopefully we'd be able to do this for your next one. I'll keep an eye out for that. So you said probably in a couple of years coming out on Frontiers, you figure, the next one?
No, probably be next year. I mean,
next year. Oh,
well, I mean,
right on.
This year coming up. I mean, at the end of this year. I mean, if it's on schedule, like the way. That's why I'm starting them now.
Yeah.
Because I mean, I honestly don't know. I mean, I love to write with people and stuff like that. I just don't know who's around. And
yeah,
it's like everybody seems to have gone. A lot of my friends have just gone underground. I don't as far as this going, and they just don't have a spark anymore or something. I don't know.
Yeah, sadly, I think COVID probably took a lot of that away.
Yeah.
It's funny too. You being in Cali now, because all the interviews I do, everybody's moved to Florida. I mean, like James Christian is there.
Yeah.
All the Queensryche moved there. I'm trying to think of everybody now, but I'm like, my God, I interview a lot of people from Florida nowadays.
Yeah, well, they all do it because it's like they got a governor who's like they love and they think he's going to take care of the state and all that stuff. And I mean, maybe so, but down here, I don't have any of those problems.
Yeah.
Because Baja it's hilarious because. I mean, there's tons of people from the U.S. that have moved down here, but Baja is California with Mexican jurisdiction. Now, you don't have the Walmarts and stuff like that, like shopping, that kind of stuff. You don't have. You have to, go across the border for that. But what you have down here is you don't have any crime. You don't get tickets. You don't get any of that stuff. You know what I mean? It's just killer for that.
Oh, that's amazing.
And I don't see like when everybody else is like having, wars and rumors wars and all that stuff that's going on. I don't see it down here. So I'm much happier.
Yeah. So I've always heard you want to be happier, turn off the news.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I don't watch that either.
Yeah.
I haven't had TV for 20 years. So.
Oh, there you go. Yep. That's the source of happiness right there. Get rid of the TV.
I got a great movie room and 1,000 movies, 5,000 watts in there. So, I can rumble anything. It's just I couldn't take I can't take the ads and I can't take all that shit. It's just too much. I don't.
Yeah, I hear you. Alrighty, well, thank you so much, Paul. Appreciate the time, loving the new stuff, and yeah.
Great, man. No problem. Thank you. Yeah, any time.
Fantastic. I appreciate that, and thank you for. I think this was like the third reschedule, so I'm glad it worked out. I know last time I think your internet went down or something right before.
Yeah, we had some really well. It's like I live at where the Baja races are.
Okay, yeah.
And so like it's a big tourist thing, and it's funny because the minute the Americans, people who just come down here for the weekend, first thing they do is drive into a pole, because they're half drunk all the time. So as soon as like anything starts, or there's any kind of vacation, something's going down because somebody's going to drive into a pole. So you just kind of go, okay, well we may not have internet tonight because we got a holiday.
Oh, geez.
Okay, buddy, you take care of yourself. I'll talk to you soon.
Yourself as well. Thanks so much, Paul. Appreciate it.
Okay, buddy.
Bye.